Hey, Thomas from Field Tennis. Today we're going to take a look at the differences between the forehand and the one-handed backhand. This topic comes up quite a lot in my lessons because oftentimes players, for example, have a good forehand, they feel the forehand well, and then they try to copy this feel to the backhand because they assume these strokes are very similar. But they're not, and today we're going to take a look at the 5 differences between the forehand and the one-handed backhand. So in terms of technique and in terms of feel. So let's get started. So the first difference between the forehand and the one-handed backhand is the forehand can be a bit more loose than the backhand. So if I hit a forehand, I can swing it more, and also my follow-through can be a bit more relaxed because the elbow can bend. And if I hit a backhand, then backhand is more firm, so I cannot do this on the backhand. That's incorrect technique, and you're not going to control the ball well. So the first difference is that the forehand is looser than the backhand. So the first reason why that is so is because the backhand has to be hit with the straight arm. So when we're hitting with the straight arm, we lock the arm and we're hitting mostly from the shoulder. We can hit forehand like that, just more from the shoulder with the straight arm, but forehand also allows to use more segments in the arm. So especially like in the follow-through, the elbow can bend, the wrist can relax more, and on the backhand we cannot do that. Another reason why the forehand is looser is because we release it earlier with the non-dominant hand. So if we're preparing correctly with the non-dominant hand together, then this is where we will release the forehand, and now the right arm is alone swinging here. So if I demonstrate one, I'm preparing here, so I would go like this, then I release and I swing. And on the one-handed backhand, if you do it correctly, so I'll show you first from this angle, I also help with the non-dominant hand, but the release is later, much later, around the hip area. So if you release here, that's not going to be a well-controlled one-handed backhand. So because the release comes later, we are more controlled in the backswing, we're kind of more controlled, and then we're releasing here. So if I demonstrate one coming here, and I release later. So that's one of the reasons why the forehand feels looser. So the second difference between the forehand and the one-handed backhand is that the forehand is much more rotational stroke. So if I demonstrate one forehand, I'll just do like a neutral stance. Then when I hit a forehand, you can see that my shoulders rotated almost 180 degrees. So let's say 160 or 150 sometimes. So when I'm hitting the forehand, I can rotate a lot, and also my hip in the neutral stance can rotate a lot. In open stance a bit less, but again in open stance I will position like this and I will hit the ball, and again shoulders rotate a lot. So one more. So if I hit a forehand, I can get a lot of power just with body rotation. So if I were just to copy body rotation to the backhand and do it the wrong way, then you might think, okay, backhand is also body rotation, and you would hit the backhand like this. That obviously is not right. So one-handed backhand does not have so much rotation. We have some rotation from here to here, and then the rotation has to stop. So if I demonstrate one, so I do rotate, and then I have to stop rotation for the duration of the hitting. So I will stop rotation, hold rotation, and then I can release again. So during the hit, there is maybe half of the rotation on the forehand side. So it's very important that you note the differences, that you don't attempt to hit one-handed backhands with a lot of rotation. So the third main difference between the forehand and one-handed backhand is that on the forehand side we can apply more topspin than on the backhand side. And that is true also at professional level. So even though professionals can spin the one-handed backhand quite a lot, if you ever see the statistics of the average spin rate of professionals when comparing forehand and one-handed backhand, then you will see that forehand spin rate is always higher. So one reason why that is so is, one of the reasons, the first one is the wrist is kind of more natural when we want to accelerate with the wrist a little bit while we're hitting a forehand. We want to accelerate the racket head. The wrist moving this way feels more natural and faster and stronger than accelerating the wrist this way. So that's one reason. And the other reason is that on the forehand, if we go for like short cross-court forehand, or you want to put a lot of acceleration on the ball, we can break the elbow to accelerate the forearm, and on the backhand we cannot do it. So if I demonstrate one forehand where I want to impart a lot of topspin, then I can do like this and accelerate the forearm like this. If I were to try to do that on the backhand incorrectly, then it would look something like this, and obviously you will see that that's not how backhand is played. So if I want to spin with the backhand, I have to do it more with the arm and the body. So this ball had a lot of spin. I'll try one more. So yeah, one more. Yeah, so this ball has a lot of spin, but I have to go with a straight arm. I cannot bend the arm. So because techniques are different, forehand allows you to impart more topspin. And another reason that we mentioned already, I can swing the forehand more. It's more loose, it's more free. And because it's more free, I can build up more speed during the swing, whereas backhand, one-handed backhand, is a bit more controlled during the swing phase. So another difference between the forehand and one-handed backhand, which you will likely find on your own, is that hitting a forehand in open stance is quite comfortable. Let me hit one ball. So open stance is quite comfortable even on the movement. If I get the ball a bit away, so if I'm moving to the ball, I get there, it's no big deal. But hitting one-handed backhand open stance is not very comfortable. So if I play like this, like I feel it's not ideal. It's good to learn for emergencies and for returns of serve. So when you're like this and you go return of serve, you have to push off the outside leg. But it's definitely less comfortable than the open stance forehand. And so even on the pro levels, the pros will tend to try and step into a neutral or even close stance for the one-handed backhand. Whereas on the forehand side, they will mostly play open stance whenever they can. They will just go neutral stance when they're stepping forward into a shorter ball. And the fifth very interesting difference that is very important to know is how do you engage your upper body, which muscles to use. So when I'm hitting a forehand, I get the ball on the forehand, then what's very important is that the chest muscles are active to stabilize the hitting arm and also non-hitting arm. So hitting a forehand is more front part of the upper body. I'll do one more. So I'm hitting a forehand and I'm more holding because I'm rotating. If you do forehand correctly, then you are using the upper body as one unit and you rotate through the ball, and that's why the non-dominant arm is here. When players do incorrectly and they drop the arm, they're not really using the upper body as one unit to rotate. They're basically just hitting with the right side forward, so they don't feel this unit. But when you do it right, the left arm will always be either somewhere here or somewhere here, and that means that the chest muscles are quite active and they're holding the upper body together as one unit, and they also stabilize the right arm so that it's not flailing around too much. And the interesting thing on the backhand side, if I hit one backhand, is that we need to focus more on the back muscles. So we're using back muscles, not front muscles. Not so much. So we're kind of more stretching the chest muscles and not using them. When players use the front muscles, like subconsciously, they're hitting forehand right and they're kind of used to engaging their front, and then they want to engage their front on the backhand, so I'll hit one incorrectly. Then what tends to happen is that they over-rotate because they're very active in the front part and they're doing like this. And also the left arm doesn't function correctly because it's just kind of going here and players rotate. So on the backhand side, we have to focus on the back muscles, which means squeeze the shoulder blades. That's my usual instruction on the one-handed backhand. So at the end of the stroke, the player should focus on squeezing the shoulder blades. And at the end of the stroke, they can think, of course, more about their muscles. So when they do that, they're going to use the right muscles, and then they're going to prevent over-rotation and also find much more stable backhand. So again, one very interesting difference is that on the forehand, we use more chest, front muscles, and on the backhand, we use more back muscles. So in conclusion, there are quite a few differences between the forehand and the one-handed backhand. It's not just like visually different. All right, of course, this one is on the right side, this one is on the left for right-handers, but forehand is more looser for various reasons. We have much more rotation, whereas backhand is a bit more firm and we have less rotation, so we're hitting it with more control, and that also applies to topspin. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.